What's up everyone, my name is Kelsey, welcome back to my channel. Today, this video is going up on January 1st, so it felt like a perfect time to do a 2019 stats reading wrap up and 2020 goals. So, quick side note, I have a really sore throat, so apologies if my voice is weird. It sounds weird to my own ears. Alright, so back into the stats. I'm going to start with 2019 reading statistics, which will be super exciting for people like me that love statistics and super boring for other people. So, feel free to skip ahead. In 2019, I read a total of 125 books, which is excellent for me, and it's a nice round number. I like that. I DNF'd 15 books and read a total of 33,121 pages and listened to 295 hours and 51 minutes of audiobooks. It boils down to 72 print books, 24 digital books, 29 audiobooks. Out of all the books, 112 were fiction, 13 were nonfiction. The authors I read, 36 men, 88 women, 4 non-binary. That does not add up to 125 because some of the books had multiple authors. Out of all the books I read, 57 of the books had queer main characters and 32 of the books had POC main characters. 45 I purchased myself, 65 I got from the library, and the rest were gifts, prizes, ARCs, or borrowed. I only had 6 rereads. 102 books were backlists, so 2018 and previous release dates. And for the genres, 49% science fiction fantasy, which is not surprising at all, 18% contemporary, 8% thrillers, 8% romance, and the rest were scattered among different genres. I read 74 adult books, 49 young adult books, and 2 middle grade. I read the most books in June, 17 books in June, and the least in November, only 3. And finally, the star ratings. I only had 2 1-star books, which is great. 18 2-star books, 27 3-star books, 49 4-star books, and 29 5-star books. Which sounds like a good array to me. I feel like I did a good job picking out books I was gonna like if 49 of them were 4 stars and 29 were 5 stars. I also started this channel at the very beginning of January. I think the first video went up like January 3rd or something, and I posted at least 1 video a week every week. So that's a pretty big accomplishment. Super proud of that. So now on to the 2020 goals. For my channel, I just want to maintain like my consistent once a week upload schedule. For reading, my total book goal is 80 books. It's quite a bit lower than what I read last year, but I have a lot more like work and other commitments in 2020, so I don't expect to have as much time to read. So I still think 80 is going to be a challenge for me without being super stressful. I also want to focus on getting my physical TBR down. I don't know if you can see it in this video. I think not, but I have a whole cart of books I own but haven't read, and then a couple shelves that are books I own but haven't read, and it's getting out of hand, and just looking at it kind of stresses me out, especially since I do tend to get books from the library as well. So like every time I get books from the library, I feel guilty because I'm not reading the books I own. To help with that, I'm going to make myself eliminate 4 books from my TBR every month, whether I read 4 books or I unhaul some of them if I don't read 4 of them. Because realistically, some of these books I've had on my shelves for like 4 or 5 years, and maybe at this point, I'm just not going to read them. I also want to read at least 1 nonfiction a month, and I'd like to focus on not memoirs. I would still do biographies of like historical figures, and then general nonfiction on other topics. And then I have a couple like non-specific goals, like I'm not setting specific numbers, it's just something I want to keep in mind. And that's that I want to reread more books. Last year I only reread 6, and 2 of my rereads were books that I had already read that year. Like I read it for the first time in 2019, and then I read it again in 2019. So I'd like to reread some old favorites. I also want to read more middle grade books. I read 2 middle grade books last year, and I really enjoyed them, so I figured I should add more in, and those also tend to be pretty quick reads, which will be good for like stressful periods. And I would like to read more graphic novels in 2020, and I think I'm going to focus on like narrative standalone graphic novels. I've tried in 2019, I tried a few like serial comic book style, and I just think that doesn't work for me. Like I need a more contained story. I get confused, and there's just, the story takes too long, and just because of the format of a comic book, like you don't get much story because it's very visual. You know what I'm saying? So I'd like to find more graphic novels in the style that I think I'll enjoy. And last, I want to read more books with POC main characters. And a side note, I'm pretty sure my statistics for some of this stuff is off, because last year I was doing my reading spreadsheet where I would, when I started a book, I put it in my spreadsheet, and then when I finished a book, all I had to update was the date finished and the star rating. But that means if I didn't know some things when I started the book, it just never got added. So if I read a book that had a POC main character, but I didn't know until I started it, I just didn't add it to the spreadsheet. So this year I'm using a new spreadsheet, and I'm going to try and do an update when I finish a book instead of when I start it, and then I can add notes about the things that each book had. Because another thing I want to get better at is labeling books with specific things, because I read so much that I find it hard to recommend specific tropes or elements in books. Like if someone wants science fiction with queer characters and found family, I've read so much that I have a really hard time narrowing it down. So I'd like to have a spreadsheet where I can just insert those different topics and only see the books with those 3 things. That would be ideal. So that's what I'm hoping what will happen while I'm updating when I finish a book. All right, that's it for my 2020 goals. I feel like it's pretty simple, straightforward, but considering I expect 2020 to be pretty stressful, I think that's a good thing. Let me know some of your reading goals in the comments, or if you have any suggestions based on the things I want to do. I'd love to hear them. I post book-related videos every Wednesday, so if you want to see more, subscribe. If you want to keep talking, you can find me on Twitter or Instagram at Kelsey Reads, or Goodreads at Kelsey Lynn Reads. Otherwise, I'll see you next week.